Right, let's go ahead and we're going to get started. So today I'm going to walk you through some steps for understanding our class project. So to start, I'm going to head over into Blackboard. So I'm going to share our screen here. And we'll head over here to Blackboard. Okay, so in Blackboard, I'm going to head to coursework, and I'm going to go to this folder right here. That's our project folder. The first point that I want to highlight is that we have two due dates for our project. The first is in October. This is when your initial plan is due. And then the second is your finished project, which is due November 10th. So key point, there's two due dates. Let's go inside and look at our options. You're going to choose just one of the following options. So that's another important key point, that there's a list of tasks here. You're choosing just one of those. Second key point is that you're posting a summary of your plan at the midpoint. There's not a completed project due in October, but there's a summary of your plan. We'll go through the details of that in just a moment. And then you post your finished, completed plan, which would be your finished project at the end of the course deadline. So that's the deadline in November. We have a list of several options for your project. So the details are here, and I'm going to come back up and walk through those details. You'll be using sources, and there's some key points here about the sources that we'll walk through. And then there's two places for posting: the midpoint summary and then your final project. Each also shows you how I'm going to be grading those. So the midpoint summary is worth 50 points, and the final project is worth 125 points. And you can see how those are broken down. So let's dive into some of the details. You have 5 options for your project. One of those may be that you choose to compare agencies. And here are the specifics if you make that choice. I'm going to ask you that you identify 5 or 6 community agencies in your local area that are supporting persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. When selecting those agencies, I want you to find one that provides residential supports, one that provides vocational supports, and one that provides recreation and leisure supports. So that's 3 specifics, and then the other 2 to 3 may be of any of those or another area, but a minimum of 1 for residential, 1 for vocational, and 1 for recreation and leisure. You're going to pull that together in a 4-page summary. In addition to those 4 pages, you'll have a title page and a reference page. So that would be 6 pages in total. And within your paper, you're going to do these 3 things. You're going to explain the services that were provided. You're going to compare those agencies for their strengths and weaknesses. And you'll share which of those agencies you would recommend and why. All right, so that's option number 1. Your second option is that you can do a traditional research paper. And you can do this on the topic of North Carolina's policies and public funding for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So if that's a topic of interest to you, you'll be writing a 4-page research paper plus the title page and the reference page. So again, 6 pages in total. And you'll highlight what are some of the key policies and funding sources right now in North Carolina for this population. A third option is to do a traditional research paper, but this time choose a specific condition. So You'd select a specific developmental disorder and research that in depth. Again, I'm looking for a 4-page research paper plus the title page and a reference page, and you'd give us an overview of that specific condition. So you just pick one, but discuss the causes, the characteristics, what types of supports might be available, and what future trends might be happening with that disorder. Okay. A fourth option is to dive into family and professional interviews. And in this time period, you may be doing those interviews face-to-face, or you may make arrangements to do those through phone calls or through the an internet such as Zoom. You'll conduct interviews with 5 to 6 persons who have personal insight to the needs of persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So you will include one person who has a close family member, one person who is a parent of a child with an intellectual developmental disability, at least one person who's worked as a direct service professional, one person who has an intellectual developmental disability. So that's 4 specifics I give, and for the remaining 1 or 2 you choose. So you could repeat something that's up there or find another area that someone might be connected to this population. You're going to choose what you're interviewing the persons on. So you may select the theme that you want to learn more about. So you want to learn more about how services are provided right here in our local area. So you might ask questions that are similar across persons that you're interviewing. Or you may want to ask what it's like for, going to school age children, and you might go across the board with all of your interviews and ask questions specifically to that. You might want to look into things such as adulthood or older adults. So again, you're choosing the questions and selecting the theme for your collection of interviews. Then you're going to summarize those interviews in a 4-page paper. And this is where I'm going to ask you to pull it together. I don't want just a word for word of I asked this and then they said that, but pull together the themes and the information that you find collectively from talking to 5 or 6 persons. You'll again include a title page and a reference page. Now, those would be that you'd be listing your interviews that they conducted with you would be on your reference page. If you use any other sources, then you certainly would also include that. And then your 5th option is to do an observation and a participation. This may be a more challenging option given our current COVID situations, but if you have this opportunity, this can still meet for this assignment. You'd be selecting a local program that is serving persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. You'll arrange to be volunteering with that program. All right, and you're going to do it through November. So before choosing this option, you need to make sure that they're going to be able to take on volunteers and you'd be able to participate in time for completing this assignment. And you're going to complete at least 5 hours of volunteer time and then summarize your experience in this paper. So it's 4 pages summarizing your experience plus the title page and the reference page if that's needed. This will be for observation and participation that you'd be volunteering during this semester and completing that before the due date of your final project. So those are the 5 options you would choose from. When you're doing the final assignment, you don't have a minimum number of sources. Sometimes you write papers and an instructor says, it must have this many sources. But I do expect you to use some sources, and I expect you to use enough sources. So if you're doing, say, a research paper, you're going to need more than one source. If you are doing the interviews, I already tell you how many to be listing or to interview. If you are doing the agency comparison, And if you're using any sources, say online for your information, you would have probably 5 or 6 sources there that you'd be listing. You must give credit for your sources, so that means that you're using in-text citations, and then when you include those citations, you must list those resources on your reference list. We should use APA guidelines, and our college has tutors or online tutor supports to help you with this. So if you're uncertain, be sure to use the helpful resources. How will you submit your work? First, you're going to develop your plan, and then you're going to share that plan with me. And your midpoint summary plan will be just these 4 things. So by October 13th, you're going to write up for me which of those choices from above. So your choice may be telling me I'm going to choose D, family and professional interviews. That's all that step 1 means. Just tell me what your choice is. Then you're going to break down details for completing your project. So if you are choosing to interview people, tell me who you're going to interview and when you're going to interview them. So you'll do some legwork before at the midpoint. Or if you're going to be comparing agencies, tell me which agencies you're going to compare. If you've chosen a research paper, tell me the topic. All right, so 1, you just tell me the project choice. 2, you're going to tell me the details, and those bullet points are the details I'm looking for. You pick the bullet point that makes sense for your choice. So if you're comparing agencies, you don't have to tell me about your research paper because you're not doing that choice. If you're comparing agencies, you don't have to tell me about interviewing people because you're not doing that choice. So hopefully that makes sense. Those bullet points just correspond with what your choice is. Then for number 3, you're going to pick 5 tasks that you need to do to complete this project. So 5 tasks might be, let's say you're doing a research paper. 1 task may be you need to find a source about the history of the disorder. Your second task might be you need to find a good source about the services for this persons with disorder. Your third task might be to find a source for the trends, and you'd break down those 5 tasks. One of your tasks may be writing up your paper. One of those tasks may be consulting with a tutor for the APA formatting. All right, so you decide what those 5 tasks are. Then for number 4, you're going to make a timeline. So you're going to take those 5 tasks from number 3, and you're going to give target dates for completing them. So you're building a timeline, and that timeline leads up to being able to complete your final project by November 20th. So you'll take your calendar and you'll identify what's realistic for getting each of those 5 tasks done and having it by the deadline. Then your final project is where you pull it all together. Final project is where there'll be those 4 pages for your paper, plus the title page and plus the reference page. And I'll be looking then for the project that is worth 125 points. I'll be grading it on your content, the completion, did you do the steps of the option, and then on the overall quality. So that's where I'll be looking at your grammar, your writing, your ability to critically think and pull together your ideas, along with using the APA formatting and reference. Backing up for the midpoint summary, much simpler grading plan. 50 points. Part of that's going to be that you gave me step 2 of your details. Part of that's going to be that you gave me, broke it down into 5 tasks. And part of that grade is going to be that you gave me a realistic timeline. And that's all that I'll be looking for on the midpoint summary. So hopefully that was helpful and walked you through what we're looking for with this project. As always, if you have questions, please reach out and I'll be sure to help you along with this.